Hello, my name's Jillian Bowen, and I'm so pleased to welcome you to Building Online Authority, a Seldon Rosser masterclass designed to show you how to build an authentic online authority program that supports your firm's goals. From time to time, Seldon Rosser will invite expert guests to present masterclasses. These classes are designed to help you stay up to date with the latest thinking in business development and marketing. Over the next hour, we're going to explore the topic of authority in detail, and I'm going to share the step-by-step process you can use to create an authority program as part of your marketing strategy. Let's start with a quick overview of what we're going to cover so you know exactly where we're going together and the steps we're going to take. Today's masterclass covers the 3 steps necessary to first plan, then build, and finally implement an authority program for your firm. During the first section, we'll start by looking at exactly what an authority program is, the benefits it can deliver, the authority personas or experts that will bring your topics to life, and how to map your authority program back to your firm's goals to ensure it's fully aligned and delivering the best possible return on investment. In section 2, we'll look at tactics to ensure your messaging stands out, even in a crowded market, and your content marketing toolkit, including the different types of content you can create and ways to promote it to amplify your reach. The last section focuses on implementing your authority program, including how to get stakeholder buy-in, the skills you need for success, setting goals and KPIs, and all the processes you need to deliver your authority program to market, optimize, and improve your tactics over time, and of course, how to identify and mitigate risks. We'll wrap things up with a step-by-step summary roadmap that you can follow to create your own authority program. There's a fair bit to cover, so let's dive in. Let's start by talking about what authority marketing actually is. Authority marketing is leveraging knowledge, build reputation, and increase awareness in an organization or industry. You may be wondering why this masterclass is focused on authority instead of influence. A few years ago, influence was a pretty powerful word. Sites like LinkedIn introduced formal influencer programs featuring some pretty impressive people like Barack Obama, Bill Gates, Richard Branson, and Ariana Huffington. Becoming one of those LinkedIn influencers was highly desirable. It was by invitation only. I know this because I spent a year jumping through multiple hoops with LinkedIn to get an Australian CEO on that list. And I'll tell you, it was not easy. But as with most appealing descriptors, a broader group was quick to adopt the term. And suddenly anyone with a blog and a bit of a following was an influencer. Worse still, they were telling people they were influencers. It was at this point that authority really gained traction as an alternative approach, which leads us to an obvious question. What's the difference between influencer marketing and authority marketing? And yes, there is a difference. Influence can be informative, but it tends to be more fun, more entertaining. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's built on numbers. Authority, on the other hand, is all about credibility. It's not about how many people see your message, but how many people listen to and act on your message. Authority builds real, deep, genuine relationships that ultimately convert. So what does that mean for your firm? In practical terms, that means authority can amplify your message, attract and convert new clients, and build or reinforce loyalty with existing clients to increase the uptake of services. There's never been a better time to consider an authority program. Trust is at an all-time low online. We all know what happened with Facebook. When trust disappears with the big players, an opening develops for clever, smaller companies to step in and reconnect with the audience. Authority allows firms to present a human side to the business. It's a way to really demonstrate expertise. It's also a great way to increase share of voice on important issues and to connect with an audience on a deeper level. And of course, it's a fantastic way to establish or rebuild, if necessary, trust and loyalty. Now, if you're going to tap into the power of authority, the first thing you're going to need is to find the expertise within your firm to represent authority publicly. So, how do you uncover the expertise? Well, the answer is different for every firm. And if you don't have obvious talent available, you may want to start with the topics or the niches, then support people with the expertise to step up to an authority role. To evaluate this, you want to take a look at the partners, directors, and fee earners in your firm. And what you're looking for is people who have a clearly defined, limited in scope, well articulated knowledge. They need to be easy to understand, believable, and relevant to the target audience. It always helps if they always have some sort of recognition or if they've been published or cited in industry publications. Let's start right at the top and look at a few examples of authority in Australia with Australia's social CEOs. In Australia, the authority marketing does tend to focus on CEOs, but you don't need to be an extroverted CEO to build an authority program. This group of social CEOs, they are considered the most active in Australia. And just as a side note, I will point out that they are almost all male, which I hope to see change over the coming years. Now, they do represent what I would call the typical authority persona of the hero. I'm going to explain more about the hero later in the masterclass and give you some alternatives to consider in an authority program. At the center of our strategy is authority. Now, as we work through this masterclass, we're going to talk about linking that back to your firm's goals and establishing topic and niche areas. But for now, let's look at the voice of authority. It could be one voice or it could be several, because each authority persona can add something different to the audience experience. There's, of course, the hero. Now, that's often the CEO or the partner. Then you have what I like to call the guide. There's the connector and the empowerer. Let me explain these in a bit more detail. The hero is the most obvious fit for authority, but it's also the one with the most extremes. The hero can be really successful, but with great success, there's often a great height to fall from. Now, our hero generally already has quite a high profile, or is in a very high profile position. They're a thought leader, but they have limited time for authority programs. It's likely to be a partner or a CEO, and they're likely to build brand awareness for your firm. There are great examples of heroes out there, but none greater than Richard Branson. His personal authority is arguably one of the biggest success drivers for the Virgin Group globally. Many people admire him. Some aspire to be him, but not a lot of people would say they relate to him. That's where our next authority persona comes in. Now, the guide is more understated than the hero, but in many cases more successful when it comes to an authority program, particularly now that building a profile is so much more achievable online. The guide is relatable. They follow a step-by-step process. They feel accessible and real. And in your firm, they're likely to be a fee earner, and they're likely to build loyalty and interest. The Barefoot Investor is a great example of a guide. Scott Pay probably isn't as popular with professional services firms, as he clearly walks to the beat of his own drum. But the public follow him like he's the Pied Piper. He shows up. He opens up about his life. He talks to people as equals and appears to put their own success ahead of his own. His advice is very real and very easy to follow. The hero and the guide are the primary authority personas, but to succeed, they often have one or two supporting personas behind them as well. Let's look at them. The connector is the glue that holds everything together. They're empathy-driven, a listener, someone people describe as one of us. Now, they're likely to be, a marketing associate, and they're likely to build engagement. Take a look in the mirror. It's someone just like you. You bring all the pieces together and connect the authority with the audience. Now, the fourth authority persona doesn't always come into play, but can be very effective in turning authority activity into conversions. The empowerer is the link between the authority value and the business offering. The empowerer, well, they make things happen and they build trust by creating relationships. Their focus is generally on others, and in your firm, they're likely to be in business development or client services, and they're likely to build growth and trust. Now, that empowerer, it's your opportunity to explain to the audience how we work with you. At this point, you may think that we're talking about four separate people, and sometimes we are, but your strategy will determine how many of those personas best represent your goals. Sometimes you'll need all four, and sometimes there'll be four separate people, or one person actually is able to represent all the personas. It really depends on your individual circumstances. Let's take a look now at how these personas work together to create an authority journey for your target market. Let's take a look at what that authority journey is like with all four personas. At the very beginning, we have the hero, the person who attracts attention, often the partner or the CEO, the very public face of your firm. Next, there's the guide. The guide is the person who's delivering the value and the information, often in a step-by-step, easy-to-follow way. Next, you have your connector. The connector keeps that engagement going. It makes the audience feel that they're part of things and that they're still hearing more and more as they're moving through that content marketing loop. Finally, we have the empowerer, the person who deepens the relationship by making the target audience really understand what it's like to take the next step, to enter into that business relationship with your firm. As we've gone through the personas, I'm hoping you're starting to wonder, well, what comes next? We know who we're talking about, but how do we decide what they're going to talk about? Well, that depends on your firm, but wherever you start, it's important to align the topic to your firm's goals. So let's take a look at how to do that. When I start mapping out any marketing program, authority included, I start with a blank template and add in the firm's goals at the top. Next, I'll start looking at the topics or the talent available and see where they connect back to those goals. This process ensures that new content is aligned from the beginning, and that as I'm then developing supporting materials, I'm ensuring the client journey stays aligned to the best conversion action to achieve our goals. Let's walk through an example together. For this example, I'm going to use a legal firm. Now, let's say one of the goals is to increase new business by 20%. It's likely the firm has identified the service areas most likely to contribute to that goal. For this example, I've randomly chosen the service area of data and privacy. As a topic, data and privacy is highly competitive. If you type it into Google, you'll find hundreds of thousands of results come up. This is going to be really tough to build an authority program in. Now, that's why we need to get a bit more specific and start mapping out our topics into niches. A few areas that are likely to be strong here are ethical data use, data breach notification, GDPR, and topical incidents. Now, I've just chosen those content ideas pretty randomly. As we move into the second section of the masterclass, we'll explore why it's important to drill down into these topics to find less competitive niches and exactly how to do it. In this section, we're going to look at the practical process of building your program, including identifying your niches and angles within those niches to minimize competition, how to create content, including the different format options, and of course, promoting that content to build awareness, engagement, and conversion. Now, unless you have a really high-profile brand or an authority voice that's already very established, your best starting point is to look for differentiators for your authority program. As you start exploring some of the areas your firm has expertise in, it's important to consider what sets you apart from your competition. By that, I do mean these differentiators. They are very simple concepts that people can easily remember and associate with your firm. The topics are not deeply entrenched with your key competitors. At first glance, you'll think that might be challenging because, of course, a lot of firms have similar service areas, but that's exactly why we're going to dive into that niching down process. And finally, it's also how outsiders will perceive your firm. To identify differentiators, think about your firm's services, the target audiences, geographic focus, significant achievements or wins, how you work with clients, staff credentials, how you work differently from your competitors. This will give you a really good broad starting point for some of your authority opportunities. On the flip side, just some examples of weak differentiators are things like, we've got the best customer service, or we hire the best people. These claims are a dime a dozen, and unless you can make them unique to your firm with very specific examples and achievements, you'll get lost in a sea of same. Identifying your differentiators is the first step towards building out the niche or the niches where you're going to have authority. Unless you have a very healthy marketing budget, building up a share of voice requires some smart tactical maneuvers. You'll find that most of those broad topics that align with your service areas are very competitive. And I mentioned earlier, you need to find differentiators that are not competitive. Now, when you look at these highly competitive areas, you'll find that it's very difficult to get audience attention, and they often have low or stagnant growth. A good example of this is payroll. The big companies like Xero, well, they've got their mitts across just about everything. Now, rather than fighting hard for a share of voice you may never get, an alternative is to be more specific. It's about moving away from that broad topic and finding a really defined niche where your voice can shine. What you're looking for is something that is low or no competition. It's about, taking a unique approach and capturing new demand. Now, a good example that aligns with payroll is single touch payroll. It's a small segment of the bigger conversation, but one that is generating a lot of confusion, particularly for small business. These businesses will see big software companies coming out at them and selling. That means someone else has the opportunity to join the conversation with a message that's aligned with helping them, not just selling to them. A niche should be a small part of the bigger conversation. If you choose well, it's a part that may actually grow bigger over time. Now, to give you a personal example, I do a lot of blogging in the digital marketing area. Now, when I got into that space, I did not have a budget. I was doing this in my spare time. I certainly couldn't promote myself. And I'm sure you know there's some big names out there who have blogs and articles about digital marketing. So what I did is I looked into it and I went, what is a smaller topic that people are interested in, but no one's talking about? No one's giving any help in that area. And I actually noticed Canva. Now, some of you may be using Canva to create your graphics, and it's a fantastic, really simple DIY graphics program. What I did is I went out and I created a 5-part beginner's course, and I started blogging about it because my target audience who are interested in digital marketing were using Canva as a tool. So it was a way of reaching them through a very, very small segment of the bigger digital marketing conversation. The end to that story is I now have over 150,000 people in just under a year who follow me on social media. I've got a mailing list of over 10,000, and I'm actually now a Canva ambassador because they saw what I was doing and saw that I had the biggest group of Canva users on Facebook, and they invited me to become an official ambassador. I can't believe how well that went. And it's a great example from my own world that shows that when you find an authority niche, you can really make it work. So how do you find that niche? Well, that's where research comes into play. The 3 areas I get the most value from, they're industry publications, Google, and a fantastic website called Answer the Public. Let's take a look at each of these, and remember, the broader the niche, the more challenging it will be to build your authority. Always keep that in mind as you're doing research. Industry publications are always my starting point. The most read section, well, that is going to tell you a lot about how people are responding to the information already available. For extra insight, have a look at comments as well. This will give you a deeper insight into what the audience wants. Look for clues like comments asking for more detail or questioning the approach of an article. These are signposts that will help you build out your authority content so that the audience is getting what they really want. What you want to do when you're looking at industry publications is come up with a list of keywords. Now, this is where you're going to use those keywords for some additional research, and that's the next step in with Google. When you consider how many people use Google to search every single day, it's not surprising that it can tell you a lot about your potential niches. For this example, I've used a very basic single word keyword, blockchain. Now, as you type a keyword or words into the search bar, Google will provide suggestions based on popular searches. In the results that you get back, you'll also see a list of things that people are asking for in their searches. For example, here, what is blockchain? What is a blockchain and cryptocurrency? Probably things that you didn't even think about relating together. You can also scroll down to the end of a search results page to see a list of similar things that people search for. All these clues will help you to understand exactly what the audience wants. I like to gather up these clues and keywords and then go to a fantastic free website called Answer the Public. Answer the Public really is an amazing, totally free resource. It's a collection of questions that people ask all over the internet. But the best thing about that is it actually breaks it down into lots of different variations that you can use to get inspiration and ideas for your niches. When you enter a search term like blockchain, Answer the Public will show you a list of questions, propositions, comparisons, and even related topics. At the end of all this research, what you want to do is have a list of possible niches that resonate with your target audience. Then you can loop back into your industry publications to see how well, if at all, these are being covered. What you're looking for is a little nugget of information that's starting to come up on the internet. It's getting talked about, but it hasn't been picked up in the media and areas like your industry publications. Once you find that little piece, that's your little piece of gold that's going to really shape your authority program. Let's loop back to our content map. Now, as I mentioned before, I was guessing when I added that list of 4 possible niche areas. After I've done all of my research, assessed my internal authority talent, I don't need to guess anymore. Those 4 topics that I've got dropping down there should pretty accurately reflect what's of interest to the audience out there. Now, what I want to do is actually see how much I can get the audience demand to intersect with the authority talent that I have within a firm. At those intersection points, you've now got your authority niches. You've found a topic that people want to hear more about, and you've got a person within your firm that is an expert on the topic. So you're ready to start creating content. Next, I'm going to take you through the content marketing toolkit to help you get that started. When it comes to content, there are so many options available these days. Imagine you've got your niche sitting there in the middle. What I want you to do is have a think about all the different things that you could create to communicate that niche and your authority expert to your audiences. When you start adding that in, the obvious thing is articles for your website, a blog, long form social media, to go onto LinkedIn and to put on external sites like Medium. Of course, video is the other extremely popular thing these days. Again, it can sit on your website. You might put it onto YouTube, or if you have the right talent available, you might even do some Facebook Lives. Podcasts are just huge at the moment. You can actually do so much with a podcast. Obviously, everyone thinks about putting your podcast on iTunes or Google Play and Spotify. The great thing about a podcast is you can absolutely put it there, but then you can use it to collect additional content. So you might have show notes that sit on your website or a transcript of the podcast that you can also put on the website, which is fantastic for SEO because of all those great keywords in there. Email marketing is the obvious one in everything these days. Email's been around forever, but it's still so important. The thing about email marketing is you own the list. It doesn't matter. Like, as we all know, Google Plus finally collapsed after everyone thinking it was going to happen for so long. It finally closed. So anything you built up in there is gone. The great thing about email marketing is you own that list. And anything you're doing in this authority space, you should absolutely be thinking about how you can communicate directly with your audience in that way so you can really control the message and make sure they're receiving it. Social media, it's huge. A lot of people think about social media as just where they're going to promote another piece of content. But as I mentioned with video, you've got the option of doing things like Facebook Live. For some people, social media becomes their primary content spot. Guest writing, or guest blogging, you've probably heard it called as well. These guest posts are incredibly in demand. More and more and more there are, especially online publications, that are looking for industry experts to talk about a topic. I'm going to show you some tricks further on in about how to possibly put someone forward to do just that. Now, not only can you have your own podcast, you can certainly put your authority expert forward as a podcast guest. There are podcasts on just about every single topic these days. One thing I will say to you is the key is do a bit of research on Google, maybe put the topic in and podcast in as search terms, but be really aware that I've noticed that podcasts don't all last forever. So make sure you go and check on iTunes or Google Play that the podcast is still producing new episodes before you spend any time pitching your authority expert through. And then, of course, there's the expert source. More and more journalists are using the internet to reach out to people and find people that can be quoted or included in their articles. It's a fantastic way to get great quotes out there from your experts. From a practical perspective, it often helps to choose one main format, and that might be article, video, or podcast that you focus on, and then maybe use some of the areas as supporting items that can help with your promotion. In terms of what you're going to produce, well, there's so many options here. It really depends on your internal authority expert. But keep in mind things like success stories. People like to hear proof that what they're talking about actually works. So if you can talk about an example where they've actually had success in their area of expertise, that's always going to be fantastic. You can also do case studies, follow the news and make it timely and topical. Honestly, there is no limit except your imagination. Now we've talked about those content pieces, I want to talk a little bit about that promotional side. Then I sort of started talking a little bit about the email marketing and how important that is and social media. Let's dig in a bit deeper and talk about how you can make that work the best for you. This is an area that's often described as owned promotion. These are assets that you have control over. The obvious one is your email marketing. So let's start there. Authority content is perfect for this channel. It's educational and not salesy, and it's often topical and likely to get open rates and click through because of that. A couple of things to consider. Depending on your email calendar, a soulless email, and by soulless I mean an email that just has one thing in it, supporting the release of any authority content is really worth considering because it stands out and it won't get lost with other messaging. If you put something like this in a newsletter, you're competing with 3 or 4 other things. Another thing I like to do is use an authority automation for new email subscribers. When they first sign up for something like a newsletter, this is an out of sequence series that introduces them to the firm, but then taps a series of relevant topics, particularly if they've opted in and nominated their area of interest. It's a great way of repurposing content and to warm up a new audience with really high value information. Now let's talk briefly about social media. And I say brief because it's a bit of a rabbit hole for most businesses these days. I see a lot of people putting a lot of time into getting their messages out as often as possible in as many platforms as possible. Look, it's understandable because social media can increase your visibility. It's one of the most effective ways to promote your content and give it a life of its own through social sharing. Now, we could do a whole other masterclass just on this topic, but for today, let's focus on the platform professional services firms are most likely to use LinkedIn. Now, there's a good reason. Unlike other social media platforms, LinkedIn's primary purpose is to provide a professional network. Current research suggests 60% of your clients will check out social media before they commit to your firm. It's something called social proof. Now, 17% of non-client referrals are also made because of social media. And most of that social media research for professional services is happening on LinkedIn. There are plenty of opportunities just in LinkedIn to keep you very, very busy. For a start, your company page will be a great place to share your authority content. Depending on how active your expert is on LinkedIn, they can also post their articles via their own profile, joining conversations on key topics with their peers, and one of my favorites, answer questions from the audience either on your company page or in your LinkedIn group. The willingness of your expert to actively participate in being active in the conversations is a very important consideration when you're building an authority program around them. Then, of course, there are LinkedIn groups that I just mentioned. Now, they've been floundering for some time, but over the course of 2018, LinkedIn's been investing quite heavily in reinvigorating that offer. Your connector persona, probably you, really comes into their own here. Using a group, you can create a community around each topic, giving people the opportunity to consume the authority content, then join the conversation in the group. I personally prefer this to enabling comments directly on a blog post. So I like to send them to a group to ask questions or add comments. So often when you go onto a website and there's a blog article, you'll see the comment section at the bottom. Instead, on my blogs, I put a link in there saying, join the conversation, and it's a link to my group. I get so many people joining my groups through that link. Now, the other area of social media I'd like you to consider is employee advocacy. The staff within your firm have their own networks, so encourage them to share. You can certainly use a paid service like LinkedIn Elevate, which manages and measures how your staff share content. And there are other social media programs that have similar functions. But look, budget is often tight for these things, so simply set up a process for letting everyone know what's available and make it really easy for them to share by giving them posts that they can just copy and paste into their own news feeds. It's as simple as that. Now, of course, then we have your website. And it's that little magical word, SEO, acronym, search engine optimization. It's a very complicated subject, but you really do want to take the time to make sure your SEO is in place. Now, if you're not familiar with SEO, please take the time to do a Google search, and all you have to do is search for something like how to optimize a blog post for SEO, and you'll get probably 9 or 10 steps that'll walk you through that. It's really simple. Well, that was a big topic area. So let's shift gears now and have a talk about PR. There's a couple of different variations here on that theme. We'll start with the very traditional area, and that is typically industry publications or daily news, that sort of thing. You can certainly send them press releases, but the problem with the press release is that all you might get is a quote or something like that. What you're really looking to do here is get them to accept a guest post or a guest article from your authority expert. Now, many publications, particularly industry publications, do accept these. What you want to do is go online and have a look generally at areas like their Contact Us page and see, do they accept guest articles? Then have a look at things like, do they provide links in there from the guest article back to websites? What sort of length are they looking for, topics and tone? I also like to take a look at their opinion pages and some of the recent articles and just check the kind of people that they're accepting guest posting from. That then gives you a fair idea if you've got a good chance of getting something across the line. Now, if they don't specifically have contact details for guest posting, just start with an inquiry via the contact page. We already did talk a little bit about podcasts, but I do want to come back to that for a minute. Honestly, this is such a rich area of opportunity. If you're looking for the contact details, you'll notice that when you go onto iTunes, particularly if you go on to their desktop version, that you can often see a linked website, and that's where you'll often find those contact details. Again, that reminder, always check that they're still in production. There's a lot of podcasts that drop off the radar. You do not want to be wasting time doing something like that and then finding out that they haven't been producing new episodes for 3 months. For inspiration, I like to spy on peers and competitors as well. You probably know a few names of people, and at the very least, you know the firm's names. So what you want to do is a quick Google search. So for example, you take the name of a fee earner, or you take the firm's name and do a Google search with a publication name or just generally and see if anything comes up. You might just discover a publication that you weren't thinking of and discover that they are accepting guest posts. It's a great way to find new outlets and new ideas that you might not have realized were out there. Pitching itself, well, that's actually pretty easy these days. When I was in PR many years ago, it was much harder work. But these days, well, you don't even have to pick up the phone. I've got a really great pitch template that I'm going to show you that is a great place to start. And if you just adapt it to your own expert, you'll find that you can be sending these out pretty quickly. Now, this is my standard template, and it always starts with the appropriate dear name. Try and get someone's name. Then what you want to do is introduce yourself and include one line about your firm and the authority writer that you're representing. Point out to them that you're familiar with their publication and that you'd like to submit a guest article idea for their consideration. This is a little sneaky extra that I think always helps get you across the line. Explain to the editor or the person that you're approaching why you think the content would be a good fit for their readership. That's what they want to know. Make it really easy for them to say, yes, my audience wants to read this. Next, add in a working title for the article. Just the main points, maybe 3 to 4 bullet points that summarize what it's about. You certainly don't need to send the whole article. Add in the name of your writer again and any additional article ideas that they may have or that you're developing for them. This is a really important point because often an editor or a publication is looking to develop longer term relationships. They don't like vetting people out for one single article. So what you want to do is show to them that if they give you a chance on one, there's plenty more to come after that. Also, if they don't like what you're pitching in this one, they may see something in that additional article set that appeals to them as well. Then just thank them for their consideration and say you're looking forward to hearing from them soon. I always think that it's really important not to be too pushy. At the end of the day, a lot of my journalist friends say to me, if they're interested, you'll hear from them. One pitch and at the most maybe a week or 2 later, a little follow-up is fine. If you don't get a response, move on to the next one. These days, there are so many opportunities out there. Don't waste time chasing one that's not coming to you. Give it a bit of a push and then move on, because ultimately there will be someone that's interested. Okay, well, we are on the home straight. We've done our planning. We've thought about the kind of authority we have within our firm. We've thought about the personas we're going to create, that tone and voice that's going to sit behind our authority program. We've looked at the types of content we can create and ways that we can promote that content out there to really reach more people that will ultimately connect with our firm and hopefully become clients. Now let's look at bringing it all together, the final implementation side. Of course, that starts with almost the most critical part of this whole thing, getting stakeholder buy-in. When it comes to stakeholders, the sooner you get them fully connected with a concept, the better. We've talked about some of the negative associations influence has these days, so it's really important to have a sound and research-backed proposal that explains authority to your stakeholders. One thing that it's really hard to argue with is data. Start collecting as much information as you can, showing the results other firms are getting, and some current research for your industry that supports the need for you to be present in some of these key topic areas that support your services. It often helps to have a really specific example of a peer or a competitor achieving strong results. It shows that you should be in that space as well. I mentioned earlier you can Google people's names and Google a name and a publication together to see what's happening out there, but also have a look at their social media. Social media is a pretty strong indicator of what they're putting out there. And if you can find any examples that are getting really good likes or comments and then go back to a source piece and show that it was actually in an industry publication, that's pretty strong evidence that you should be doing it as well. If you run into any resistance, I often find a middle ground is to suggest running a pilot just against one service area. Try before you buy, so to speak. And I always find that if you involve your internal authority experts in the process, you might find that they take more ownership over it and they begin to feel very connected, and they'll help drive it forward for you as well. Now, one final tip, it never hurts to give a stakeholder just enough information to let them reach a conclusion. That way they feel like the idea was almost their own. Now, once you have that stakeholder support, it's important to assess the skills needed for your authority program to succeed. These are the overall skills that will help you put together the entire implementation. When you're getting ready to implement your authority program, it's important to review the skills you have available and determine if you're going to need any additional support. The skills you're likely to need are things like research, and that's the keywords you're looking for, finding your niches, really honing into your target audience and their needs, looking at competitors, and finding guest posting opportunities. From the strategy point of view, you're going to be looking at the positioning and messaging, content, promotion, offers, networking, and partnerships. Of course, you're going to have to produce editorial content. That could be articles, newsletters, guides, white papers, ebooks and books even, webinars, presentations, and research reports. For your marketing content, there'll be promotional emails, offers, ads, website copy, pitches, and proposals. When you get into the promotional side, networking and social media, partnerships, pitching for those guest posts and articles that you've found in the research stage. And of course, measurement is so important. So you'll need to have a really solid understanding of how to use analytics for your website, social media, your email software, CRM, all of those conversion factors. And of course, A/B testing is always really important in this kind of program. Now, in terms of implementation support, obviously there's a lot of scheduling, there's project management, content calendar management, website management, automation, graphic design, layout, presentation preparation, social media management. There's a lot of different working parts to your authority program. If you're working on your own, really be realistic about what you need and whether or not you're going to need to get some outside support to help you so that you can actually achieve your goals. Now, speaking of goals, let's talk about those and how we're going to set our goals and some KPIs. Now, back in the planning stage, we talked about how important it is for everything in your authority program to align back with your firm's goals. That includes the specific goals you set for the program itself, and SMART goals are a great place to start. They are, of course, specific, well-defined, and clear to anyone with basic knowledge of the project. Measurable by what and when. They should be agreed upon, so that's where your stakeholder buy-in comes in. You also want them to be realistic, and that's when we talked about making sure you've got all the resources and skills, knowledge and time necessary to implement. And of course, time-based. Make sure you've got enough time to achieve them. Once you've got your goals in place, you want to establish some KPIs. These are your key performance indicators that you're going to use to monitor and report on and optimize your authority program. Some of the KPIs that I think are really good to track in an authority program are, of course, for your website. You're looking at your website traffic, the direct organic referral and social media traffic that comes out of this activity. Of course, with social media, you'll be particularly looking at the engagement you're getting and of course, click through to anything that has a link. For your email list, keep an eye on things like the opt-ins, how it's increasing the numbers on your mailing list, the open rates, the click-through rates, and of course the unsubscribe rate. That tells you if people don't like what you're doing, which is just as important as finding out what they do like. With your guest posting, just keep a track of things like how many successful pitches you get. And then once you have something, particularly if it's online, how many click-throughs from that actual piece came back to your own website if there was a link included. For earned media coverage, how many, the quality of the media outlet, and the depth of the coverage and reach. And of course, overall impact of what you're doing. This can be a little bit harder to measure and some of it will be anecdotal, but really do your best to try and capture how many inbound leads there are, how many proposals get sent out, the conversions, the new clients, the existing clients that increase the services they're utilizing. You're looking at the firm growth and the firm profitability. Now, as I said, sometimes this can be hard to measure, but you can track these things by looking at if you had one particular month where you had a lot of authority content going out, was there a corresponding increase in inbound leads? And you can draw a few conclusions from that. Once the goals and the KPIs are established, I really like to then map out the campaign, preferably for the next 12 months. I'll show you what that looks like. Having a 12-month plan will really help you to stay organized and work to a schedule, particularly when you've got multiple people contributing. What you'll be able to see is a really high-level view of what you're distributing, what your focus is across topics, and establishing that cadence there, which is the continuity that comes with it, because consistency is so much more important than quantity in any program. This sample calendar is based on a publishing schedule of blog articles once per month. You can see that I've included in there the month, of course, the niche that it covers, the name of the authority, the content type, the title, the channels that it'll be distributed through, the draft due date, and of course the publish date. You can certainly add in more information, but this is a really good basic starting point. Now, we're rapidly approaching the end of the masterclass, but we still need to just cover some of the practicalities of getting all this content created, published and promoted. You've probably got some of your own processes, but I want to share a few of mine that you may see a few things there that inspire you to include them as well. You may end up ghostwriting some of the content for your experts, but from an authenticity point of view, it is preferable that your authorities are completely involved in any material they're representing. From experience, I can assure you it's not a good idea to leave your authority alone to create that content. They may be great at this, but the content needs to align back to your goals and it has to be optimized for promotion. So a step-by-step process with important dates for draft and final versions is really important. I like to make the first step a general meeting with your authority expert where you can discuss the niche and then agree on a content idea. From there, do some research to ensure the idea hasn't been recently covered by a competitor or in an industry publication. Then go back to the authority with your recommended keywords and explain how they need to be optimized through the content for SEO. Your authority expert then creates that content. They can complete a draft, which then you'll get and review with any feedback that can help them optimize it further and just make it a really strong piece from a marketing perspective. Now, once those revisions are through, let them have a final look at it, make sure they're happy. It is their name on there. And of course, the content is published. While this process is underway, you should also be creating the assets that will support that final piece once it's actually published and out there for your audience. I'll step you through some of the things that I do in that as well. Now, your master list of required assets will probably be consistent for most pieces of content. You're going to need email copy for a newsletter or solus email, social media copy for each platform where you'll promote the content, and possibly for staff so they can help promote it too. You'll need some blog images, newsletter images, social media images, and any email material will need to be designed or put into a template so that you can load it into your mailing list. Once you've got an article, you can load it onto your CMS. And of course, then you're going to look for things like internal links. Internal links are great for SEO. They're really an opportunity to highlight any other relevant content and of course, service areas within your firm that you want to promote. Now, send out those emails and let people know about it. Post it to social media, and finally start collating the results so you can look at the final step in the process, optimization. Optimization is such an important part of any marketing program, but the thing we often do is put pressure on ourselves. So before we start, let's just talk about being realistic. Results are going to take time, particularly if this is an area you haven't done a lot in the past. Really just start looking at some of the very simple things. What you want to do is keep an eye on which topics are resonating with your audience. Now, which content formats and channels are resonating? These are the really important things, and you're going to be able to see all of this by analyzing your data and looking for trends and relationships. For example, if you release a piece and web traffic goes up on that day and new business inquiries go up, it's likely there's a correlation. Gather your data from all of your formal places, but look for those correlations as well. Those are the ones that truly show that the program you've created is aligning back to the goals for your firm. Okay, we really are ready to wrap up. So we're going to do one last thing before we talk about the roadmap, and that is a quick word about risk. There's always a risk that any content-led strategy can drift away from the core goals unless they're firmly set in place at the planning stage. Goals like awareness, brand building, generating new income, these need to be entrenched in all content activities, in particular authority. One other risk area for an authority strategy emerges when it focuses on individuals, not the firm or the brand. The important thing here is balance. Think about, are the gains worth it? If you're building your authority to deliver on a specific organizational goal, then you're achieving that goal. There's also a few steps you can take to mitigate the risk. Online growth building should preferably take place in the firm's owned properties. By that I mean the website and the social media in the firm's name. That means that any investment in an individual's social media accounts should be avoided. If they do have accounts branded in their name, then all the necessary exit agreements need to be in place so they can be transitioned if necessary. That brings us to the end. We've covered a lot of information in a very short space of time. So let's finish up with a quick summary roadmap. Now that you know all the details, Let's put it into some simple points so that you can look at actioning an authority program yourself. This is your authority roadmap. It all starts with the plan. You're thinking about what topical authority is available in your firm. Then are those topics aligned with the firm's goals? And who are the appropriate authorities for each topic? Then we're going to build the program. What are the channels you'll use? What are the content formats you'll use? And of course, the implementation. Creating that 12-month plan, deciding on goals and KPIs, setting milestones for review and optimization, and preparing for any risks so their impact is minimal. Thank you so much for joining me for this Seldon Rosser Masterclass, and I hope you found some inspiration for an authority program for your own firm. We'll share some opportunities to ask further questions via the Seldon Rosser LinkedIn company page.